The fact that no one sitting in your chair right now has the same exact experiences, demographics, psychographics, and cultural lenses that you have at this moment. There's been billions of people on this earth, and there is no one like you.
Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita, and the founder of Power Purpose Play, a global community of women in midlife. I'm here to tell you that it's your time now to rediscover what has always been inside of you and bring that out into the world. If you're wondering what's next, but don't know quite what that is, or if you feel a twinge in your heart telling you that you have so much more to do and so much more to offer, you're in the right place. Ask yourself, if not now, when? Do you want to leave your job, start your own business, take control of your health, reignite the passion in your marriage, write that book, or at least that first chapter? Transitions like this can be daunting, but through listening to my story and interviews with incredible women every week, I hope to inspire you to take action. I rediscovered myself after the age of 50, and I know you can too. It's my time now to help you do just that. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive in. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita Ahuja, and the founder of Power Purpose Play. We are a global platform which is dedicated to advancing the personal growth and inner power of women in midlife. Our goal is really to help you rediscover yourself as you move forward in the next chapter of your life. To that end, I interview incredible women every week who will serve as inspiration to you to take that little twinge in your heart and act upon it. This week, I have the pleasure of speaking with the brilliant Genein Letford. As the 2019 LA Lakers businesswoman and the 2015 California Charter Teacher of the Year, Genein is a national thought leader and creator of the concept of intercultural creativity. She is the founder and chief creative officer of CAFFE Strategies, which is a consulting, coaching, and training company that trains C-suite executives and employees to create sustainable organizational equity and inclusion strategies while unleashing their innovative thinking for themselves and in their businesses. Her 7 Gems of Intercultural Creativity is a leading framework that encourages corporations in their diversity and inclusion development. Genein believes that creative thinking thrives best in an inclusive environment, and she's often called America's creative coach for her work in reigniting intercultural creativity within our workforce. Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention Podcast, Genein. I'm honored to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yes, there's so much there. Your work sounds incredible and so important, especially in these times of turbulence that is going on in the world right now, throughout the world. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about, your story and how you got involved in all these incredible things that you're doing today?
Sure. I'm an educator by trade. So kindergarten through 5th grade for 15 years. And then I started a nonprofit around 2014 for the graduates of my elementary school from 6th grade to 12th grade. And then I found myself doing a part-time lecture position at our local university, California State Northridge. So in 1 week, I saw a 4-year-old all the way to a 64-year-old in the same week. And so that just gave me an interesting perspective on the pipeline about what our students need, but what just people need to live a life well lived. And I got into creative thinking. I taught like music background and just that integration. But when I got into creative thinking, which is more than just artistry, it's really conjuring up those new ideas, those innovative ideas. It had me think that people can be creative. I can train the cognitive creative thinking skills, but if you're not in an environment that's inclusive, an environment of belonging, then the creativity skills, it doesn't matter because you're not able to really execute. And so I saw a lot of work with that. And I also saw a lot of work with people and their own journey on seeing themselves as creative. There's a lot of people who are harboring either some childhood issues or even trauma or just bad experiences that affected their identity of seeing themselves as a creative person. And the last thing I'll say is the number one skill needed in the workforce today per the World Economic Forum is creative thinking. So we really have to get this down.
Mm-hmm. Almost as though creativity in the past was kind of like a bad word. It's like it's meant for the artists and not for regular people, I would say, right? So that's wonderful that you're bringing up these concepts. And if we were talking about our audience at Power Purpose Play, we're all about how we can rediscover ourselves as in our next stage of life. And you speak about intercultural creativity. You mentioned it a little bit, but how does that kind of relate to individuals and how we view ourselves as we evolve in life and in their next stage, for example, for the people who are listening?
Sure. It's interesting. I use a lot of metaphors and comparisons to early childhood development. And if you've been around children or infants, you know that they have milestones, right? Mm-hmm. Like by 6 months, they should hit this. By 1 year, they should hit this. And if they're not hitting those milestones, or at least showing some progression toward them, it gives you a red flag, and it has you seek additional help and resources to see what's going on. And that made me think of, why don't we have milestones in adulthood?
Right.
Have things that help us see. If I meet a 5-year-old and the 5-year-old has not progressed till 10 years old, that's 5 years of no growing, developing, learning. So I'm going to check out what's going on. But if I meet a 30-year-old and meet the same 30-year-old at 35 and nothing has really changed, that's normal to us. Why? And so with this work, it really just has you increase your self-reflection and your self-awareness of, am I growing, and do I see myself as creative? And if I do, what am I creating and putting out there in the world? And so the 7 gems, and I can go over them when you're ready. The 7 gems just really gives us a framework to make sure we're hitting those milestones, which are just for us. For infants, they're across the board, more or less, but everyone is on their own journey and everyone's on their own path. So what are those milestones for you? And then how can you use the gems, right? Stones. How can you use the gems to help you monitor and modify and adapt and continue to grow?
I love that analogy with the milestones, because we often don't think about it. You're right. As children, as children developing, because they develop so fast, we're like, oh, well, if they haven't walked at this certain age, or there's something happening or something wrong. But as adults, if we're stagnant in our growth or in our, development, then it's not really, we don't really think about it that way. So that's a really interesting concept. And so you talked about your 7 gems of intercultural creativity framework, and how do we practically do this? And like, as in our everyday lives, or can you maybe describe it and give us some practical tips and how we actually do that?
Sure. So the intercultural creativity, it's really the combination, because creativity is a lot about the unobvious associations and combining new things to make even newer things, right? Mm-hmm. And so I looked at cultural competence, which is your ability to be observant of different cultural situations or cultural people, and you're able to see complexity within them. And there's actually something called the IDI, the Intercultural Development Inventory, which shows that you can develop through this process. So people who are able to really connect well with people from different lived backgrounds are able to adapt and to modify their behavior depending on their cultural situations. They are more developed in their cultural competency. And so I looked at the cognitive strategies and the cognitive processes needed for creative thinking, such as, divergent thinking, reframing, metaphorical thinking, and things along those lines, and the cognitive strategies for cultural competency. And they're actually the same set of skills. And it's those skills that lay out the 7 gems. And so I'm just sharing this and writing about this and training at different corporations and organizations, saying, we know we need culturally competent people for inclusive environments. We also know we need creative thinkers, because it's a skill we now need for survival. It's not even a fun to have. Like organizations that want to stay alive, you have to have creative thinkers at every single level, not just a C-suite, at every single level. So why don't we just train them together? They're the same set of skills. And so really quick, these gems are, the first one is creative growth mindset, based off of the work of Carol Dweck. You can't get better at something that you don't think you can even get better at. And so looking at creativity and cultural competency as developmental processes that you can get better if you work at them is key. Because Carol Dweck's work talks about fixed mindset and people who say, okay, well, either you have it or you don't. There's no really working at it. You're either born with it or you're not. Mm. And so understanding that there's no growth that can happen if you're entering a process with that type of mindset. So creative growth mindset is the first gem. The second gem, and feel free to jump in.
Yes. So that's, I just was trying to kind of absorb what you said here. So creative growth mindset is you can't grow if you obviously have a fixed mindset. And what are some of the ways you can get out of that fixed mindset?
Sure. It's first of all, self-awareness is key. Another thing is really examining maybe what you have been exposed to. There's even fields that we're in. Carol Dweck talks about how some of the hard STEM fields, the field itself is a fixed mindset. If you enter into physics, some people believe you either have it or you don't. If you work and struggle and continue to work at it, then that means you're not a true physicist. The research from that is amazing. And some of the things that you can actually do today is put yourself in experiences where you're not a master. Of course, children deal with that a lot more, but adults, when's the last time you tried something new for the first time? When's the last time you did something new for the first time? And having more of those experiences, because then your brain says, it's okay that I'm not a master at this. Let's keep working. And then you will move that into other areas of your life as well.
Interesting. So self-awareness and putting yourself in experiences where you're not a master. So those are some of the tips to go from a fixed mindset to growth mindset. Great. Fantastic. What's the second gem?
The second one I call it open mind, open heart, the empathetic way. And so empathy is a big word in the business arena right now. And the one thing that people need to understand is to be a highly creative person, but also to be a highly culturally competent person. Empathy is a must. You have to have an open mind and open heart. And the number one indicator per the research of highly creative people is people who have an open mind to new experiences. And the number one indicator to people who are culturally competent are people who have an open mind to people with different lived experiences. So if you're living with a closed mindset and very just divisive away from people who are different from you all the time, that is affecting your creativity, but it's also affecting your cultural competency as well.
Okay. So open mind, open heart. And the key to that is having empathetic environment and people who can relate to diversity, if I'm getting that right.
Yes, putting yourself in new experiences and introducing yourself to new people with relieving judgment behind. That's the key thing, because you can introduce yourself to new people and just judge all day, right?
Right. Yeah.
But it's really, and I'll talk more about what you can do to strengthen this gem, because it's within the other gems that you can strengthen that gem as well.
Yeah.
And so the next gem, you don't really hear too much about this gem. This one I'm calling I See You, I See Me, cultural observation. And observation is key. Number one, we're already at a deficit as humans. There's sounds we can't hear, right? There's things we can't see, the gamma waves, microwaves. The visual spectrum is like this big, very tiny compared to all the whole spectrum. We're already at a deficit. But are humans already just dulling our senses even more? Right. And so when you don't observe, it's hard to be creative if you don't have any data to be creative with. And so how do we increase our observation skills in the environment? But this also affects our cultural competence as well. So how do we observe people, right? The definition of cultural competency is you're able to see complexity. So how do we increase that complexity when we look at other people from different lived backgrounds? What does that look like?
So how do we increase our cultural observation?
Yeah. There's a great book out there called, I believe it's like the 11 Walks. And what the author did was she took 11 walks around her block, right? The same route with 11 different people with different expertise. Because depending on your background, you see things, you observe things. The word observe doesn't just mean to see, it means to pay attention to. It comes from the Latin. So what are you paying attention to? What's taking your attention? So when you spend time with people from different lived backgrounds who have different either cultural observations or cultural just ways, routines that they've done things, you're paying attention to the way that they see things now and things that you may have missed. And so that's why diverse teams are so critical, because if you have everyone on the same team like you're seeing the same things, but you're also missing the same things. So that's something that you could do today, is really have experiences and have people observe. And you'll see me kind of going back to the same.
Well, it's all about, it's paying attention. I like that. Observing is not just seeing, it's paying attention to how other people have their lived experiences and kind of walking their walk. Or is that because you mentioned that being able, if you're walking around like that 11 walks around the block thing, that's interesting because each person sees things in their own perspective, in their own observant ways. And so we can, if we're open to it, we can learn from each individual's different perspectives. That's how I'm observing now what you're saying.
And observation, once again, it means all the senses as well.
All the senses.
And so when's the last time you've really worked on your smelling sense? And it's funny now that I'm deep in the research and I have a 3-year-old, like we have, it's aroma time. And he's like, that's peppermint or that's frankincense.
Nice.
And when I'm cooking, I have him and myself smell the different spices. When we're looking at an object, I have him touch it. So there's a great book called Keeping Your Brain Alive by Dr. Katz for people who want to reawaken their brain and make sure that the brain stays fit. And he talks about when you have an experience, if you just use one sense, it gets encoded, but there's the sensory real estate is in different parts of the brain. So if you smell, you touch, you see, and even if you taste the same object, now different parts of your brains are being activated. And so that's going to encode the memory even deeper. So you'll be able to retrieve it, but it's also going to just give you a fuller experience to it.
Wow. Okay. So using your 5 sense, that helps with keeping your brain alive and the whole concept of cultural observation as well.
Yes. So with that, I see you, I see me. Are you looking at people with multi-layers, or are you just allowing bias to come in? So I do a lot of training on unconscious bias, on just other DEI concepts, because it affects your observation. It affects the way you see yourself as creative, and it affects the way you see other ideas from other people coming into you. Because don't forget, we are seeing the world through our cultural lenses. And so if I think all women with purple hair don't have good ideas, the second I meet a woman with purple hair, it doesn't matter what comes out her mouth, I've already coded it as not a good idea. And so people are dealing with that and they're not aware.
That's unconscious bias, right? Yeah.
Yes. And it affects our intercultural creativity. So my work shows the alignment and the intersection between the two.
Okay. And so that's 1, 2, and 3. What's the 4th?
Yes. Curiosity. So if anyone's worked with children, you remember or know how curious they were. But I'm going to ask you, do you remember how curious you were?
If I think about it, I was very curious as a child, but that kind of, I think as in different stages of our life, our level of curiosity changes, in my opinion. I think as perhaps when we're in our earlier 20s and 30s, yes, we're curious, but we're also, other things are more important. And as you grow older, in my opinion, I think you get more curious. At least I do. So.
Yes. So my work is looking at how do we increase that, though, get back to our high levels of curiosity, because they say
as we're as a child, right? When we, okay. Sorry, interrupt. Yeah.
If creativity is the engine of innovation, curiosity is the engine of creativity. So it all rests on your curiosity. And that's true for cultural competency as well. If you are curious about other people and their lived experiences and how you'll work together and how people are bringing their perspectives to the table, it's a different ballgame than if you're apathetic. Right? The opposite of curiosity is just not caring. And so I look at environmental curiosity. How are you curious just about your environment and just things and the physics around you? But then we connect that to cultural curiosity. How are you curious about people, about their perspectives and about their observations and how it intermingles with the way that you have experienced the same phenomenon?
Mm. I'm so interested in that piece because obviously my whole goal here with this podcast is to interview different people every week. And I'm curious as to what their stories are. How can we learn from them? So it's that curiosity is the engine of creativity. I love that. So I think if we are not asking questions of people, if we're not curious as to why what they're doing and why they're doing it, then it's that apathy that you mentioned. So I think that part is that piece is really, really important.
Yes. And for you interviewing different types of people, it does a few things. Number one, you're trying to maybe fill in missing gaps. So there's something going on with them that I would love to know about. And number two, it leads right into the next gem of perspective shifting. So you are able, and congratulations to you, because you are a genius, a creative genius.
Oh my goodness.
But even more,
I don't know about that. Thank
right?
you.
First gem, you got to believe it. First gem mindset. It's all about mindset. And because a lot of my work is based on neuroscience and the subconscious, my degrees are in psychology and education. My son even does declarations. I am creative. I am confident, because your subconscious is listening and your subconscious is recording everything you're saying. And so if people are walking around saying, I'm not creative, your subconscious is saying, okay, well, let's fulfill that. And so I have people be very mindful of the way of start seeing yourself. Even if you don't truly believe it, just start saying it. And then your subconscious will fall in line. But like I was saying, you are a creative genius, and you doing this podcast is supporting that because it's increasing your ability to perspective shift. Mm-hmm. And what we found out on my podcast, I interviewed Dr. Michael Platt. He's the author of The Leader's Brain, and he's one of the top neuroscientists in the nation out of the Wharton School of Business. Mm-hmm. And he says, Genein, leaders need to know how to perspective shift. Perspective shift is going to be one of the top skills in leadership, because you'll need to be able to shift your perspective and just be able to understand and almost to future think what another person is doing or is going to do. Mm-hmm. And the reason why the other gems are key as far as your own self-awareness and your own self-reflection is because you need to understand where you're shifting from. It's hard for you to make that, I don't want to say comparison, but just that observation of two different lived experiences if you've never done any reflection work on your own lived experience, right?
Sure.
And I have tons of stories to support that. So perspective shifting is key, and practicing that, using your imagination to practice that. There's just a lot of neuroscience behind how to do that, which helps you with the next gem, which is authentic adaptation.
Yes. If I could just, one thing you said about when your son, the declarations of I am creative or I think that's so important. And I don't think we do that enough. Is that really, and I believe a lot in the energy levels we all kind of emit. And if you're emitting this positive energy or positive declarations, I don't know if that helps with perspective shifting, but it does. I think it does bring out these vibrations that positive things will come back. I don't know if you feel that, but it's that those positive declarations, I really believe in them. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Yes, and it is key. He's actually coming out with his first book. Yes, he is 3 years old, but he's Sean, the creative kid. You can find him. You can find him on all the social media.
Well, I'm not surprised having a mom like you.
Well, yeah, it is a co-project, but he's writing it because he's doing everything. I'm just putting it in English, but everything in the book he's doing. He just can't type yet.
That's amazing.
But you are exactly right. The things that we put out, our words are energy, and so everything you put out, everything everything, even that you're thinking, your body is interpreting, your body is aligning with. And so there's a business term called the Pygmalion effect, right? And it's about the leadership. And if your leadership sees potential in you and sees you that you can thrive, you will become in alignment with that and be in alignment with the expectations. And there's another term, which is the opposite. If your leader thinks you're not going to amount to much and why are you even showing up here? You will succumb unless you're very, very, very strong mentally, and you'll know to get out of that environment. But it's very, very powerful. The self-fulfilling prophecies that people have, and that's why I have folks be aware of that.
Fantastic. Okay. And number 6.
So the 6th gem is authentic adaptation. And this one is key because for people to be culturally competent, they have to know all the other gems before it, and then how to effectively adapt in different cultural situations, especially now that we're on a global scene. We were before the pandemic, but especially now, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be talking to people who have different lived experiences, but maybe even be from different countries, different ethnicities, they speak different languages. They have different customs growing up. There's different power stances between people in power and people not in power. And so are you aware of the differences, and can you adapt accordingly? And I say authentic adaptation because I put the word authentic there because you should know what your core values are. You don't I will never adapt and be directly against my own core values. You won't see me striking someone down or just things that don't resonate with who I am and the things that I believe to be true. But being able to culturally adapt and environmentally adapt, adaptation is what's kept, our species alive, right? Those two can adapt to survive. So that's actually a creative skill and a culturally competent skill as well.
I really like when you said about your core values. That's one of my parts of my course that I'm teaching is if you don't know what your core values are, how are you going to kind of reinvent yourself or rediscover who you really are? And those core values change as you get older or as you change circumstances. So authentic adaptation. Okay, great.
Yeah. And the last one is being a bridge. When you think about bridges, they're structures that allow resources to go back and forth, correct? And Malcolm Gladwell, in one of his books, because I've read them all, so they all kind of blur together, but I believe it was The Tipping Point, but he talked about connectors, right? The power of the connector and that person who's able to connect people from different cultural groups or different disciplines. And there's also a great book out there called The Medici Effect by Franz Johansson. And he says, innovation happens at the intersection of fields, disciplines, and cultures. And the research backs up that quote, that when people opened up either their borders or opened up their lives or opened up their experiences, innovation happens. It's very hard to innovate if you are secluded in your one way of thinking. And so we put these gems together. They're a training course, and the book is coming out within the next month or so on how it looks to develop both of these in your creative capacity, but also your culturally competent capacity as well. So you can have intercultural creativity, because we have to come together to create together, and we'll be better for it.
It's amazing. So the being a bridge, I really obviously resonate with that too, because that's, as you're building communities, whatever different communities you're building, that you have to be the person who does the connecting, and the only way we can have innovation or learn from other people is to open that connection up, and in my opinion. So these 7 gems, you said you have a book coming out to describe all of them, or?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have a mini book that I kind of send out just to let folks know what it is. But then the actual book, with 50,000 words, I'm like, this is the last book I'm writing with 50,000 words. But that'll be up soon, and that'll be on the website as well at CAFFE Strategies, CAFFE Strategies.com.
Fantastic. We'll have all the links there, and congratulations on that work. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of maybe thank you for going through the 7 gems. I just wanted to kind of bring it back to women in midlife who are listening to this podcast, and that we talk a lot about our own limitations that we put upon ourselves, and also cultural and societal limitations. And do you have any, from your research and from your work, any ways that we can kind of unleash or let go of some of those limitations or obstacles that are in our way? And how do we do that? Any tips, or maybe how you did it?
Hi, my friend. Kavita here. Do you often feel blocked from moving forward? We all feel that way at times. These are referred to as energy blocks. I've created a short, actionable PDF guide to help you release your negative energy blocks. Click the link in the description to download it now for free. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Sure.
Yeah.
Working with the whole pipeline, like starting my career working with children and now working with adults, it reminds me of a quote that Frederick Douglass said of it's easier to build strong children than to repair women and men. And it's true, because when you're working with adults, you might have to dismantle a lot of untrue beliefs and untrue cognitive structures that have been there for decades, right? But with kids, they're there.
Right.
And so you get to build. And so the first thing I just have people just really be true. I mean, you can't get work done if you're lying to yourself, or if you're not truthful. So the thing is just really be true. And also I have people be aware of if you're over identifying with a particular title. Like, I'm a mother, I'm an educator, I'm a speaker, I'm an author, I'm multiple just productions, right? Mm-hmm. But first and foremost, I'm Genein. And so I really had to grasp with that and understand that, yes, I'm developing. Genein at 20 years old is different than Genein at 42 today. Mm-hmm. And I have to give that 20-year-old Genein grace of saying she knew what she knew at that time. Kind of like the quote from Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better, right? But back then I didn't know a lot. But also, how can I harness the lessons from 20-year-old Genein to help 42-year-old Genein be better? So it's really a grace of giving myself love and grace. And that's why one of the gems of just having self-compassion. I don't think we really have that. And then another thing that I talk about and that I do is just really, and you've heard this word, the mindfulness, but it's the ability to get back to the basics. And by back to the basics, I just mean, number one, your breath, of knowing when to stop. If you have a lot of things going on, like your profession, a lot of people my age may have, they call it like you're couched in between aging parents and I have a 3-year-old, so a really small child. Yeah. But you're couched between raising kids and supporting your parents. So yes. There's a lot of people who are vying for your energy and you only have so much, right? Every day. Yes. And so I really take time to get back to the basics and just stop and breathe. And going back to the brain research about the importance of activating all of my senses to really calm myself. People may think that essential oils or that is like foo-foo, rah-rah, but it's actually brain research that it helps. Yes. So don't think it's for like people who are prancing around in the prairie fields or whatever. Right. It actually works. And so you may not be able to take 3 hours away to be by yourself, but could you take 10 minutes and really putting it on your schedule to do that? Another thing is I grew up with a speech impediment. I stuttered all through elementary school. I still stutter today. There's been times when I couldn't even say my name fluently. So the fact that I'm a global speaker is quite the journey, right? And I still struggle. Wow. Okay. Yes. But that was a huge mindset shift, right? Yeah. And going from the speech therapy room to the TEDx stage, I realized I had to shift the way I interacted with my stutter and to shift the way that I saw my stutter. And so your listeners may not have a stutter, but they may have something that they have struggled with in their formative years or in their past. Yes. And so when I looked at my stutter as a superpower as opposed to a liability, it helped me basically build the framework that you see today. Say, Genein, you may stutter. It's okay. Your message is more important than you stuttering just to get it out. The people who need to hear what you have to say are more important. So I removed focus off of me when I'm presenting and put it on to the people that I'm there with. So if you see this, there's times that I focus on me, and I'm a mom and then a wife, and other times, then there's times when I focus on my audience who I'm trying to serve. And so I make sure I give every element time, including myself, because a lot of times women don't put themselves on that list, right?
I think many times. Thank you for sharing that story. I mean, that is such a great example, because I said so many things. A lot of times we focus on our perceived limitations versus viewing those as our superpowers, and that we don't celebrate ourselves enough, especially as women. And I see this time and time again. And if we are, like you said, be true to ourselves, celebrate ourselves, be aware of all the things that we have done, and go back to basics, and take time for ourselves. And that's part of the reason I have play in my title is play, meaning really take the time for yourself. And I really love what you said also is if you really have a message or something that you want to share with the world, don't put yourself in the way of doing that. Don't say that I can't do this because I have a speech impediment, or I have this, or I'm not good enough, or whatever. It's so important to, in my opinion, we all have unique gifts and strengths, and get out of your own way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And there's 2 points I want to make sure I bring up, which is very relatable to your audience and to your title. The first one is play. And I think it's very crucial that people understand the importance of that word in this show, because once again, play, like creativity and imagination, it could be pigeonholed toward, oh, well, that's just child's play and that's just for kids, but I'm a grown-up. And actually the research is very, very clear. Play does certain amount of things. And when I say play, you can interpret that as you just having fun, or you know, just doing different activities that allows the brain to get into its innovation network. When you're focused doing bills and typing and doing emails, you're in your focused attention network, where your brain is like, yep. When you are in your innovation network and you are playing, or you are just allowing your brain to kind of just wander, and your imagination to wander, that's the innovation network. So imaginative ideas, new ideas can come from your self-conscious into your conscious and allow you to think about things that you never thought about before. And so when I see my son daydreaming or my husband daydreaming, I don't snap them out of it. Before I'm like, okay, Sean, come back. It's like, no, he's in his innovative network. He's in his mind. He's playing around with his thoughts. And so you find yourself doing that when you're in play and when you're in flow, if you've ever heard that term, right? Yes. When you're doing something and it's just automatic almost, and you're just in flow.
Well, when time goes by and you're like, what happened to the last 3 hours? Because I was so much in flow, and your creative juices just, and it's like, oh yes, that's 3 hours later. What happened, right?
And for people to bring that back into the workforce. So allowing people to have play time, quote unquote, allows them to not only hopefully just look at problems from a different perspective and ask those funny, silly, off the wall questions that will lead you to really interesting insights, but it also allows for marginalized consequence, which is the fact that if you're in play, you're not fearful of losing your job or getting fired, right? Right. So a lot of times people don't take risks because of that, of those that unseen consequences of getting in trouble. But when you're in play, those consequences are greatly lowered. And so you're able to take more risk. And the level of risk, of intelligent risk, by the way, you're not like shooting folks and stuff, but you know, the level of risk, and during your play and during your investigation time, if it goes up well, the type of creative ideas that you become in contact with are just mind blowing.
You have to give yourself time to rest and to play, in my opinion, and whatever that definition of play, like you said, it should be individual and also an organization. So thanks for highlighting that. So one of the things that you talked a lot about diversity and inclusion and celebrating our uniqueness. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that as women and how you see it as it evolved in organizations and in society. And I know that's a big question, but just maybe some comments on that.
Sure. I believe, I do have a few things to say about
I'm sure.
that because it's a critical part in growing the intercultural creative goals that we now have. Nilofer Merchant from the Harvard Business Review talks about the onlyness of you, right? And it's a concept in our trainings. We have something called the diversity diamond. My logo is a diamond, so you'll hear a lot about diamonds and gems, and we believe everyone should shine bright here. But the onlyness of you concept is...
Sorry, is it the onlyness? Onlyness?
Yes, onlyness. So
onlyness.
Only and then ness. So it's
okay.
kind of like a made up word.
Okay.
But the fact that no one sitting in your chair right now has the same exact experiences, demographics, psychographics, and cultural lenses that you have at this moment. There's been billions of people on this earth, and there is no one like you. Mm-hmm. And I'm a twin. I have a twin sister, and I can say there's no one like me. Now we're fraternal twins, so of course, but still, even with twins, there is no one with your same exact psycho, demo, and experience graphics on this earth. Mm-hmm. And so what I want people to get from that is that companies, mark my words, in this next decades are going to see the creative value that they're losing by not allowing people to bring in other facets, right? Like a diamond has multiple facets. We are multifaceted. And so not allowing people to bring in other facets into their workspace. And you've heard the term showing up as your full self, right? That they're losing out on the creative possibilities of the interactions of these multiple facets to the work. And we say, hey, here's your job description, do this and don't really venture out. That was going to have to change because everything is dynamic. Everything is switching so quickly that organizations are going to start folding and closing if we don't get constant innovation and creativity. And the way we get that is allowing people at all levels, not just C-suite, not just mid-level managers, but even people who are just been onboarded last week. What do you see? What has your experience been like? And how do you think we can make it better? Because you see something that the CEO doesn't see. You have experienced something that the CMO has not experienced. So what is your perspective?
Mm-hmm. So that's so important. What I would say is, have you seen in your work, especially in the last, I guess, 2 years now that we've been in this pandemic, have these concepts come more to light? Are people becoming more aware of them? And is it something that organizations and individuals are embracing more?
More than before the pandemic, yes. And where we need to be, no, because the word, like I said before, the word creativity, imagination, play, things along those lines, they were just, okay, well, why are you here? Maybe if we have some fun time and a little bit extra in the budget, we'll get to you. Yes. And slowly, especially as really credible media has been coming up with it, like the Harvard Business Review, Stanford's coming out, and people who have been in this type of work for a while are now being paid attention to. And so my work is just joining the two of the diversity, the DEI work and the creative thinking work. But another point that I want to make that I think is applicable point for your listeners is being aware that what's obvious to you may not be obvious to others. And so if you're like, hey, well, I do this all the time and it works for me, but it's just me is what I do. And then for you not to share that with your team or with your accountability partner or with whoever, you're assuming that they know what you know. But now we can't assume, because we need people to share these concepts, because then someone else may take what's obvious to you and say, well, I didn't think of it that way, and suddenly create a whole new product or service or solution that we have not seen. And so we're looking at this new type of thinking, and you will see mark my words, you will see a shift in leadership training, right? Mm-hmm. Less do as I say and just be quiet and do your job description, but more of a self-awareness, more of a community, and more of lower level employees being able to challenge the status quo and challenge. So the leader isn't the authoritative imperialistic position. They're more of the guide. Right?
I love that. Yeah. I hope that does happen. I hope it's happening more and more. And I really like what you had said earlier about each one of us is unique and multifaceted. And that's what I want to bring out in our listeners, is that you're onlyness of you, and you are unique and you have something to say. And so don't let things in your mind or in your heart stop you from doing what you only you can bring out into the world. So I really believe that's so important. And I think we could talk for a long time, but you have so much knowledge and so much great information here, and it's been wonderful. I know you have a podcast. Can you tell us a bit about that, and maybe anything else that you want to share about what you're doing and where people can find you? And
sure. My podcast is called Create and Grow Rich. And it really looks at not just rich like financially, but your creative health does affect your financial wealth. So I do make that combination as well. But I want people to know that their creativity affects so many areas of their life. And I bring on thought leaders, like I said, top neuroscientists. I just spoke to someone who is a confidence coach, right? She's one of the top confidence trainers in the nation. So how does confidence affect your creative thinking and the way you show up in the world? And I believe that's a big area of development.
Oh, I'd love to hear that one. I'm curious to hear that one.
She's great. And we really just, and then I have Diamond Mentor moments on the podcast. And that's just like 10-minute little just wisdom tips of things that you can look at differently and employ in your life the next day. And it's just really getting people to understand and to re-engage with that term creative thinking and what it means for their life at this point in their life.
Amazing. Fantastic. So yes, I would encourage everybody to listen to the Create and Grow Rich podcast for sure. And and your book is coming out as well. And we'll have all those links. But I know that a lot of your work is within organizations, and I also believe that all these 7 gems and everything you do is so appropriate for individuals, and especially in any stage of life, and especially as we're in midlife, when we have so much ahead of us to look forward to. And if we can tap into our creativity and some of the tools that you have mentioned, I think our lives will be richer for it.
Yes. And I do have courses for individuals going up within the next few months or so. So it's not just organizations, because like you said, everyone needs access to this information. So Absolutely. Just check out the website to see when the books are coming out, and the courses as well. And there's a LinkedIn course called Creative Thinking for Business Leaders on LinkedIn Learning that your audience can listen to as well. Yes.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Genein. Is there anything you want to, end off with, or?
Just that the reason why I was not sad when Maya Angelou died, because she is an example of a life well lived, and she left everything on the table. She was fully creative. She knew it, and she wasn't perfect, and she knew that as well. But she was fully creative in all of her experiences, and she took the step to allow us to almost take the journey ride with her and to learn from her lessons with her. And is she really gone? Because her books are here, her videos are here, her productions are here. So what does it really mean to be alive? And what does it mean to have a life well lived? So I just want to encourage your listeners to, when you leave this earth, try to make sure everything is out of you. All the great gems and aha moments you put somewhere for other people, even if it's just your children or your family, but just someone can glean from the wisdom that you acquired during your time here, because you are meant to shine bright like a diamond.
Oh my goodness. I can't, that's mic drop there. That's beautiful. What does it mean to be alive? Let's just end at that. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I learned so much from Genein on the topic of intercultural creativity and so many other relevant and important topics that we can all apply in our lives. I hope you enjoyed it too, and here are some of her many key takeaways. Number 1, the number 1 skill needed in the workforce today is creative thinking. People can be creative, but if you're not in an environment which is inclusive or of belonging, then the creativity skills don't matter because you're not able to really execute. 2, cultural competence is your ability to be observant of different cultural situations, and you are able to see the complexity within them. 3, the 7 gems of intercultural creativity are 1, a creative growth mindset, 2, an open mind and open heart, or the empathetic way, 3, I see you, I see me, or cultural observation, 4, curiosity. If creativity is the engine of innovation, curiosity is the engine of creativity. 5, perspective shifting, 6, authentic adaptation, 7, being a bridge or being a connector. Number 4, to get out of a fixed mindset, become self-aware and put yourself in experiences where you are not a master. Try something new for the first time. 5, when you experience something with all your senses, different parts of your brain are being activated. That will encode the memory even deeper so you can retrieve it and it will give you a fuller experience. 6, how to release some of our limitations that we set on ourselves. Be true to yourself. Be conscious if you're over-identifying with a particular title or role. Give yourself grace. Have self-compassion and get back to the basics like your breath. Stop and breathe and activate all your senses to calm yourself. 7, play allows you to get into the brain in its innovation network. Imaginative and new ideas can come from your subconscious into your conscious. You find yourself doing that when you are in play or flow. When you're in play, you are more willing to take intelligent risks. 9, be aware that what is obvious to you may not be obvious to others. You are assuming that others know what you know, but we need to share. We could create a whole new product or solution that we may not have been ever thought of before. 9, when you leave this earth, try to make sure everything is out of you. What does it mean to be alive, and what does it mean to have a life well lived? All the great gems and aha moments, put them somewhere, so someone can gain or glean from the wisdom that you have acquired during your time here, because you were meant to shine bright like a diamond. Thank you for being here. You could be so many places, so I appreciate you taking your time for yourself, for your own personal growth. If you enjoy what we stand for at Power Purpose Play, you will love our newest offering. I reinvented myself after 50, and I'm giving you the exact framework and process I used to get where I am today. This is in a course called It's My Time Now, How to Rediscover Yourself in Midlife. It is about finding yourself again, and I'm your guide on this incredible journey. All the details are in the links below, and I'm so excited to tell you that the doors to this opportunity are now open. Will you take the time for yourself? As Genein said, we have this one life, and you are meant to shine bright like a diamond. Let me help you do just that. If you have any questions at all, DM me directly at the links below or email me at kavita@powerpurposeplay.ca. Till next week, in love and in light.